The entity is free, but it's not finished. There's one last secret hidden in Hollowbrook, and once you find it, you'll wish you hadn't. The curse of Hollowbrook is ancient, and the final chapter of this story will reveal its horrifying origin. The town of Hollowbrook has always been a place of quiet unease, its secrets buried beneath layers of time and forgotten memories. Now, as the first signs of the entity's presence seep into every corner, those long-held secrets begin to rise to the surface, no longer content to remain hidden. In the days following Emma's disappearance, the town has grown unnervingly still. Houses stand abandoned, their doors left ajar as if the residents simply vanished overnight. Once busy streets are now eerily empty, and in the shadows, flickers of movement catch the corner of the eye. Figures, barely visible, drift through the town, their forms dissolving before they can be fully seen. Detective Lisa Porter arrives in Hollowbrook, her car cutting through the silence as she pulls into town. A seasoned investigator, she has spent years chasing down rumors and reports of strange happenings across small forgotten towns like this one. But Hollowbrook is different. There's something about this place that feels heavier, darker, and it's more than just the weight of the missing persons cases that have piled up over the years. Lisa's arrival is no accident. A cryptic message from Emma had found its way to her just days before short. Desperate, almost incoherent, but there was no mistaking its urgency. Now Emma is gone, and Lisa is determined to uncover the truth. What she doesn't yet realize is how far the entity's influence has already spread. She steps out of her car, surveying the town. Hollowbrook looks ordinary enough at first glance. A quaint, unremarkable place nestled in the hills, where time seems to move just a little bit slower. But there's something wrong here. The air feels thick, charged with an energy that Lisa can't quite place. As she makes her way toward the town square, she notices the silence. No one is around. Her investigation leads her to Jonah, the old man who seems to be the only one left who knows what's really happening. Jonah is a shell of his former self, his mind frayed from years of exposure to the entity. His eyes are wild, darting from side to side as though expecting something, or someone, to appear at any moment. He warns Lisa not to stay in Hollowbrook, tells her that once you're caught in its web, there's no way out. But Lisa is not easily deterred. She's faced strange cases before, and she's not about to abandon this one, not after the message from Emma. Jonah reluctantly agrees to help, though he does so with a grim sense of inevitability. He knows what Lisa is up against. It isn't long before Lisa uncovers something far more disturbing than she expected. Deep beneath the old church at the edge of town, hidden beneath layers of dust and forgotten memories, she finds a chamber. This place hasn't been touched in decades, maybe even centuries. It's filled with relics from Hollowbrook's past, symbols carved into the stone walls, old books and scrolls, and fragments of what appear to be human bones. In the center of the chamber, an altar stands, stained with the remnants of an ancient ritual. Lisa pores over the documents, piecing together the story of Hollowbrook's founding. The town, it seems, was never meant to thrive. It was established as a last-ditch effort to protect the surrounding lands from something far worse. The settlers had summoned the entity, not as an enemy, but as a guardian, a protector against a far greater evil that slumbered beneath the town. But something had gone wrong. The settlers had miscalculated, and instead of controlling the entity, they had unleashed it. And now, with the destruction of the dead tree, the symbol of the seal that had once contained the entity, there was nothing to keep it from spreading its influence across the town. Hollowbrook is its playground now. What would you do if you discovered your town's entire history was built on a mistake? Would you stay and fight, or would you leave while you still could? We're all ears. Tell us what you think in the comments below. As Lisa dives deeper into the settlers' diaries, she uncovers even darker truths. The entity had demanded sacrifices, children taken from their homes and offered up in exchange for the town's protection. The dead tree was more than just a symbol. It was a marker, planted to hide the true source of Hollowbrook's curse. Beneath its roots lay something older, something far more dangerous than even the entity itself. And now that the tree is gone, that ancient force is beginning to stir. Jonah, though broken, knows the truth. He's lived in Hollowbrook long enough to have seen the signs, to have watched as the town fell under the entity's control. He tells Lisa that there's only one way to stop it, a ritual, the same one performed by the original settlers. But it requires a blood sacrifice. Lisa's determination wavers for the first time. She's been chasing the truth, but now she has to confront a horrifying question. Is she willing to go that far to stop the entity? As the days pass, Hollowbrook begins to change. The streets grow darker, the buildings creak and groan as though they're alive. The townspeople who haven't already disappeared start to act strangely distant, disconnected, like they're sleepwalking through their lives. Ghostly apparitions appear more frequently, their faces twisted in agony, their eyes following Lisa as she makes her way through the town. They whisper her name, but she forces herself to ignore them. Lisa gathers the items she needs for the ritual, each one harder to find than the last. The entity is watching her now, its presence growing stronger with each passing moment. The dead tree's destruction has unleashed something powerful, something angry, and Lisa can feel it closing in. It manifests in small ways at first, a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye, a soft whisper in her ear. But then, the vision starts. Emma appears to Lisa in her dreams, her eyes vacant, her voice distorted by the entity that now controls her. She warns Lisa not to go through with the ritual, telling her that it will only make things worse. But Lisa knows there's no other option. The ritual is the only way to stop the entity, the only way to save what's left of Hollowbrook. Do you believe Emma's warning, or do you think Lisa should follow through with the ritual? What would you do? The final pieces of the puzzle fall into place as Lisa prepares for the ritual. She stands at the edge of the clearing where the dead tree once stood, the charred remnants of its trunk still visible against the darkening sky. The air is thick with anticipation, the ground beneath her feet trembling as though something below is waking up. Jonah, frail and fearful, stands at a distance watching. He's too scared to get any closer, but he knows what's coming. Lisa places the relics on the ground, arranging them in the same pattern she found in the settlers' diaries. The ritual is ancient, its origins long forgotten, but its power remains. As Lisa begins to recite the words, the wind picks up, howling through the trees with a force that feels almost unnatural. The sky darkens, clouds swirling overhead as if the world itself is reacting to what's about to happen. And then the ground begins to shake. What do you think will happen next? Do you think the ritual will work, or is something else going to happen? Lisa's hands tremble as she finishes arranging the relics around the blackened remains of the dead tree. The air is thick, charged with a power that feels unnatural. Above her, the clouds twist and churn, casting the clearing in an oppressive darkness. The ritual words hang on her tongue, waiting to be spoken, but she hesitates. Jonah stands at a distance, his eyes wide with a fear that Lisa understands all too well. She knows this is the only way, but deep in the pit of her stomach, she can feel something else, an ancient presence, one far older and far more dangerous than the entity that has haunted Hollowbrook for so long. The ritual was never meant to end the curse. It was meant to contain something far worse. And now, as Lisa begins to speak the incantation, she can feel it stirring beneath her feet, just below the surface, waiting to be set free. With each word that leaves her lips, the ground begins to tremble, a deep rumble that seems to come from the very heart of the earth. The wind howls through the trees, whipping her hair across her face, and the temperature drops, the air around her growing colder with each passing second. The moment the final word is spoken, the ground splits open with a deafening crack. Lisa stumbles backward, watching in horror as the earth itself begins to tear apart. A jagged fissure spreads across the clearing, its edges glowing with a sickly light that seems to pulse in time with her racing heartbeat. And then, from the depths of the fissure, it emerges. The entity, once nothing more than a shadowy figure, barely visible, has now taken on a monstrous, towering form. Its body is twisted and grotesque, its limbs impossibly long and ending in sharp claw-like appendages. Its eyes burn with an unnatural red glow, and its mouth stretches into a wide, jagged grin. The air around it seems to warp and bend, reality itself twisting in its presence. But as horrifying as the entity is, it pales in comparison to what follows. From deep within the crack in the earth, something far larger begins to stir. The ground shakes violently, and the fissure widens, spewing forth clouds of dust and ash. A massive form rises from the depths, a creature unlike anything Lisa has ever seen. Its body is covered in dark, leathery skin, and its many eyes gleam with a cold, malevolent intelligence. Its presence is overwhelming, its very existence bending the world around it. This is the ancient force that the settlers had tried to contain all those years ago, and now it is waking up. Lisa stands frozen, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps as the creature towers over her. The entity, which had once been the greatest threat she had ever faced, now seems insignificant in comparison. This ancient force is far beyond anything she could have imagined. The ground beneath her feet is crumbling, the world itself seeming to fall apart as the creature rises higher and higher into the sky. Jonah's voice crackles through the walkie-talkie, his words barely audible over the sound of the earth tearing itself apart. "We have to stop it," he says, his voice shaking with fear. "There's only one way." Lisa turns to look at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She knows what he's going to say before the words leave his mouth. They had both known on some level that this would be the only solution from the start. A sacrifice. A blood sacrifice. Just like the settlers had done so long ago. Jonah steps forward, his face pale but determined. "It has to be us," he says quietly. "We have to bind ourselves to the town, just like they did. It's the only way to keep it contained." Lisa stares at him, her mind racing. She had come here to end the curse, to free Hollowbrook from the entity's grasp. But now, she realizes that she had misunderstood everything. The curse wasn't just about the entity, it was about containing this ancient force, keeping it trapped beneath the earth where it couldn't destroy everything. And the only way to stop it now was to seal it away again. But that seal required blood, and there was no one else left to make the sacrifice. What would you do if you were in Lisa's position? Could you make that sacrifice, knowing it was the only way to save the town? Would you put yourself in such grave danger? Lisa grips the ritual dagger tightly in her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. The creature looms above her, its many eyes watching her with cold, predatory intent. The wind howls around her, the ground cracking and crumbling beneath her feet. Time seems to slow, each moment stretching out as she prepares to do what must be done. She glances at Jonah, his expression resolute, but filled with a deep sadness. They both know what this means. There is no coming back from this. With a deep breath, Lisa raises the dagger. The blade catches the dim light, gleaming for a moment before she plunges it into her chest. The pain is immediate and overwhelming, but she doesn't stop. As her blood spills onto the ground, the air around her begins to change. The wind dies down. The earth stops shaking, and the creature lets out a deafening roar as it begins to sink back into the fissure. Jonah watches, his face streaked with tears, as the ancient force retreats into the earth. The town, once on the brink of destruction, seems to return to its eerie stillness. The buildings, which had been crumbling moments ago, stand tall once again. The streets, once dark and filled with shadows, are now quiet and empty. The entity, now weakened and fading, vanishes back into the woods. Its power, once so overwhelming, has been drained. For a moment, there is peace. Lisa's body falls to the ground, her hand outstretched as the last of her life slips away. Jonah approaches slowly, kneeling beside her. His hands shake as he reaches for her, his heart heavy with grief. She had saved the town, but at what cost? As Jonah kneels there, something strange begins to happen. A faint, almost imperceptible sound fills the air. A soft melody, haunting and familiar. The same lullaby that Emma had heard before she disappeared. Jonah looks down at Lisa's hand, his breath catching in his throat. A small sapling has begun to grow from the ground where her blood had spilled. It's fragile, barely more than a sprout, but there's no mistaking what it is. The cycle has begun again. The curse isn't broken, it's simply reset. The entity, the ancient force, and the town of Hollowbrook are all part of something far bigger, something that can never truly be stopped. Jonah stands, his face pale and drawn. He knows what this means. The curse will return, and when it does, there will be no one left to stop it. What do you think will happen next? Do you think the curse can ever truly be broken, or is Hollowbrook doomed to repeat this cycle forever? The sky above Hollowbrook is calm once again, but the threat is far from gone. The town is quiet now, but that quiet won't last forever. The entity, the ancient force, and the curse, they are all part of a never-ending story, one that will continue to haunt Hollowbrook long after Lisa and Jonah are gone. If you want us to continue the story or explore new chapters based on the previous storyline, make sure to like all 3 of our videos. Your support will help us decide if we should keep it going. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to get alerted once we drop new stories.